Hello dear students, welcome. This is Joseline here, and today I am going to continue what is moral action written by Mahatma Gandhi. Already we have completed 3 parts. In first part we learned that customary actions cannot be called moral actions. Alright, in second part we studied that an action that springs from our will only be called a moral action. If we think and act, such actions become moral actions. Alright, in third paragraph, Gandhiji very clearly describes that an action to be called moral is not enough that it is good. It must also be done with good intentions. So good actions with good intentions can be called moral actions. Only good action cannot be called a moral action. Let us see what Gandhiji has to tell us in the next paragraph. Shall we start? Fine. These reflections prove that it is not enough for a moral act to have been done with a good intention, but it should have been done without compulsion. Gandhiji says it is not enough that a good action is done with good intention. So in paragraph 3, Gandhiji says good action must be done with good intention. Okay, only then it can be treated as a moral action. In the same way, good action must also be done without fear and compulsion. Without fear and compulsion. So Gandhiji makes it very clear with 3 examples. Let us see the first one. There is no morality whatever in my act if I rise early out of the fear that if I am late for my office, I may lose my situation. Situation means your job. Imagine a man or yourself or anyone. A person gets up early in the morning. Don't you think getting up early in the morning is a moral action? I mean, it's a good action? Definitely it's a good action. Getting up early in the morning is definitely a good action. But if you are getting up early, imagine a person is getting up early in the morning out of fear, then his action will not become moral. What fear? See, if he feels that if I don't get up early in the morning and if I don't reach office on time, I will lose my job. With this fear, he gets up early in the morning, then there is no moral content in his act. If he feels, yes, it is my responsibility to get up early in the morning, finish all my routines and then reach office on time because I have been given a job by someone and it's my duty to be responsible. Okay, feeling responsible, if you get up early in the morning and reach the office on time, then definitely you are getting up early in the morning is moral. Otherwise, it is not at all a moral action. Don't get up early in the morning out of fear. Feel responsible. Only then your getting up early in the morning has moral content. Alright, dear students, see what Gandhiji says more. Similarly, there is no morality in my living a simple and unpretentious life if I have not the means to live otherwise. Second example. In fact, Gandhiji gives 4 examples here. First example is about a man who gets up early in the morning out of fear. And any action which is done out of fear cannot be treated as a moral action. In the same way, living a simple life cannot be called a moral life. Of course, living simple is a good life. Living simple life is a very good life. Okay, but to call a simple living a moral one, you have to keep something in mind. What is that? You see, Gandhiji says, but plain simple life would be moral if, though wealthy, I think of all the want and misery in the world about me and feel that I ought to live a plain, simple life and not one of ease and luxury. Gandhiji says, living a simple life will become a moral one only when you compare yourself with others. Gandhiji gives example of two people here. One, a person who has no means to live in luxury. He has no wealth, he has no money to live in luxury, so he is living a simple life. So his life cannot be called a moral one. Whereas another person, he has a lot of wealth, he has a lot of money, but he compares himself with the miserable people in the world. He feels there are many miserable people in the world. So comparing his life to their life, he chooses to live a simple life, not a luxurious one. You need to keep 2 things in mind. A person has no means to live, he has no money to live a luxurious life, so he is leading a simple life. So this kind of simple life cannot be called a moral one. But the second person has got every means, he has got a lot of means, a lot of money, a lot of wealth to live a luxurious life, but he chooses to live a very simple life because he compares himself with the miserable people in the world. Such kind of life is moral life. Alright, so plain simple life becomes moral when you compare yourself and to choose to live simple though you are wealthy. Alright, dear friends, let's move on. Likewise, it is only selfish and not moral of an employer to sympathize with his employees or to pay them higher wages lest they leave them. Lest means to avoid the risk. Imagine an employer, boss, owner, enhances the salary, increases the salary, gives increment. Giving increment is of course a very good act. But Gandhiji says good act becomes moral only when it is done without fear. See here, the employer enhances the salary of his employees, feeling pity on them. He sympathizes with them. Or he fears, if I don't pay my employees higher wages, higher wages means salary. If I don't pay them higher salaries, they may leave me. They may leave the job. With this fear, if he enhances the salary, or with sympathy or with fear, if he enhances the salary, then is enhancing or giving increment cannot be treated as a moral action. Of course, giving increment is a good action, but it cannot be treated as a moral action if it is done with sympathy or fear. What fear? The fear that if the boss doesn't pay more, if he doesn't give proper increment, the employees would leave him. Then when can increasing the salary would become moral? Let's see. It would be moral if the employer wished well of them. Them here refers to employees. If he wished well of his employees and treated them kindly, realizing how he owed his prosperity to them. Of course, a boss or an employer should not increase the salary feeling sympathy or out of fear. He should think well of his employees. See what Gandhi says. It would be moral if the employer wished well of them. An employer must and should wish well of his employees. He should be kind towards them because he should have the feeling that, he should always feel that his prosperity is because of his employees. He should owe his prosperity. He should give the credit of his prosperity to his employees. Only with this feeling, if he enhances the salary, his action would become moral. See, feeling sympathy and out of fear, if he enhances, this action is a good action, but it cannot be treated as a moral one. But if he wished well of his employees, and if he is kind towards them, and if he owes his prosperity to his employees and enhances the salary, then his action would definitely be treated as a moral one. Alright, let us see the fourth example. This means for an act to be moral, it has to be free from fear and compulsion. That's what Gandhiji makes it very clear, that when an act is free from fear or compulsion, only then that can be treated as a moral action. Fourth example is when the peasants here refers to farmers, especially small farmers in this case. When peasants rose in revolt and with bloodshot eyes went to King Richard II of England demanding their rights, he granted them the rights under his own seal and signature. But when the danger was over, he forced them to surrender the letters. I'll make it clear. So, Gandhiji speaks of an incident which happened in 1381. In 1381, King Richard II was the emperor. Richard II was the king of England. At that time, he imposed heavy taxes on the farmers. Farmers had no freedom to produce and sell. They had to, give most of their, produce to the king in the form of taxes. The reason why the king enhanced, levied heavy taxes was that At that time, his army was engaged in a great battle with France. To meet the expenses of the battle, to meet the expenses of the battle defense, as well as to run the administration, he had to impose heavy taxes on the people, especially farmers. So farmers had no rights to produce and sell on their own. They had to give everything to the king in the form of taxes. So when again and again the taxes were increased, the peasants, farmers became extremely angry. Violently, bloodshot means violent. Violently, they in a big, huge group, they went to King Richard demanding their rights. They not requested, they wanted the king to withdraw the taxes and to give freedom to produce and sell on their own. Okay, and King Richard saw a very big group of farmers assembled before him and were extremely violent. Remember, the king was in dilemma. Not dilemma, in fact, he was extremely frightened. He was in panic because he saw that the peasants were extremely bloodshot. They were extremely violent. They were ready for anything. Seeing this, the king immediately cancelled the taxes. He gave permission letters not to pay taxes. Alright, are you able to catch the point, dear students? See, he couldn't control the situation because his army, most of his army was engaged in fighting against France. As a result, he could not control the situation. So he was frightened to see a huge group of farmers in revolt against him. So he immediately gave permission not to pay taxes. See, Gandhiji says, but when the danger was over, he forced them to surrender the letters. Danger was over. He called, when the army came back, or he called back some of his army men, and he took control of the situation. He arrested many farmers who rose in revolt. He killed many of them. In this way, he took control of the entire situation. After taking control, he forced the farmers to pay taxes. He took the permission letter back. He told the farmers to pay the taxes strictly. So what Gandhi says, it would be a mistake for anyone to say that King Richard's first act was moral and the second immoral. For his first act was done only out of fear and had not an iota of morality about it. Iota means small amount. Gandhiji says first action cannot be called moral. See, he cancelled the taxes. Cancelling taxes is of course a good one, but it cannot be called moral because he did not willingly cancel the taxes. He out of fear cancelled it, so it cannot be called moral. Second one, he took control of the entire situation. He killed many farmers, he arrested them, and then he imposed heavy taxes on the farmers. He told strictly to pay the taxes. This cannot be called immoral because a king cannot meet the defense expenses and run his administration without taxes being paid. I think you got the point here. So neither first action nor second action are moral. Both are non-moral actions. Got the point here, students? They are neither moral nor immoral. Both actions are non-moral actions. So it is very clear, dear students, that Gandhiji says, an action done without fear and compulsion is called a moral action. If any action is done out of fear, it cannot be called moral action. Got the point, dear students? So in first paragraph, Gandhiji makes it very clear that customary actions cannot be called a moral action. In the second action, he says an action becomes moral when it comes from your will. Okay, then in third paragraph, Gandhiji makes it very clear that good actions done with good intentions are called moral actions. And in the fourth paragraph, Gandhiji makes it very clear that an action done without fear and compulsion is a moral action. To emphasize this fact, what fact? The fact that an action done out of fear, without fear and compulsion is called a moral action. To emphasize this concept, Gandhiji has given 4 examples. In first example, Gandhiji talks about an employee, a person who gets up early in the morning out of fear. Getting up early in the morning out of fear cannot be called a moral action. Of course, getting up early in the morning is a good action, but to call it moral, you must be responsible. If a person feels it is his responsibility to get up early in the morning and reach office on time, then definitely his action would be a moral one. And in second example, Gandhiji gives, he gives an example of simple living. All simple living cannot be treated moral actions, moral living. Okay, Gandhiji gives an example of a person who has no means to live in luxury. Okay, he has no money, he has no wealth to live a luxurious life. So he chooses to live an unpretentious, modest and simple life. So his simple living cannot be called moral one. But he gives the example of another person who has got a lot of wealth, money, everything, but he chooses to live a simple life because he compares him with the others, miserable people of the world, in the world. So he chooses to live a simple life, though he has wealth. And in third example, Gandhiji gives an example of an employer, boss, owner of a firm, enhancing the salary. Enhancing the salary is of course a good action, but to call it moral, some mandates are necessary. See, if the boss enhances the salary, feeling sympathy on his employees, or because of fear that they leave him, then his enhancing of salary is not moral. If he increases the salary because he wished well of his employees, and he should be, and he should be kind towards them, and he should owe his prosperity to his employees. With this feeling, if he enhances the salary, then his increasing of the salary would be a moral act. Correct? And in the final example, Gandhiji, states King Richard II's example. King Richard II, when King Richard II was the Emperor of England in 1381, farmer, rose in revolt against him for imposing heavy taxes. So seeing the violent farmers, the king, he withdrew the taxes. He cancelled the taxes. But Gandhiji says the cancelling of taxes is of course a good act, but not a moral one, because King Richard II did it out of fear. So with these four examples, Gandhiji makes it very clear that any action done out of fear and compulsion cannot be called a moral action. Okay, to call a good action moral action, it should be done without fear and compulsion. Okay, students, I'm going to stop now. In the next part, I will complete the lesson. Okay, please read all the 4 paragraphs again and try to understand the things necessary to call an action moral one. Got the point, dear students? So please take care of your health. Don't go out. Stay home. Stay safe. I'll be back soon. Bye.